The road was clear at 6:30. The route had been mapped the night before. Nothing should have stopped this convoy. 6 trucks, fuel and rations for the front, idling outside a French village nobody back home could pronounce. Then Private Curtis Boyd saluted a passing lieutenant. The officer looked through him like air, kept walking, and didn't slow down. Boyd's hand stayed up a second too long. Behind him, 5 drivers watched and didn't move their trucks. Within 2 days, General Patton himself stood on this same stretch of mud. This is what happened when one salute almost stopped his army. You have to understand how strange this looked from the outside. A column of trucks, dead stopped, drivers leaning out of their cabs, engines burning fuel they couldn't spare. No roadblock, no enemy fire, no mechanical failure. Just 6 trucks sitting still on a road that led straight to men who needed everything inside them. The convoy had pulled out at 6:30 sharp, right on schedule, the kind of morning where nothing was supposed to go wrong. By 7:15, it had covered less than 2 miles. The road itself was fine. Packed dirt, dry enough, no shell craters, nothing the engineers hadn't already cleared 3 days before. That was the part that made it strange. There was no reason on the map for this convoy to be sitting still. Every reason was sitting in the cab of the lead truck, in a man's hand that had gone up and come back down without an answer. Sergeant Walt Pruitt walked the line first. He'd been riding escort with the convoy since dawn, and he already knew exactly why nobody was moving. He told the drivers to forget it. Drive on. The war wasn't going to pause for a salute. But the men behind Boyd didn't restart their engines. They sat there, watching, waiting for somebody to say what had just happened actually mattered. Pruitt walked back down the line a second time, checking each cab, hoping somebody had changed their mind in the last 5 minutes. Nobody had. One driver, a kid from Ohio named Hollis, just shook his head and said he wasn't moving until Boyd said it was all right to move, and Boyd hadn't said anything at all. He was still standing by his door, hand back at his side now, jaw set, staring at the spot on the road where the lieutenant had walked past him. That sounds small. It was not. Pruitt went to find Lieutenant Daniel Ashworth, the officer who'd walked past Boyd without so much as a glance. Ashworth was 24, new to combat command, a Vermont boy who'd spent more of his life worrying about timetables than about who saluted whom and why. When Pruitt raised it, Ashworth waved him off, said the driver was being dramatic, said they had a war to fight and trucks didn't move themselves. He ordered the column forward without ever turning to look at Boyd directly. The trucks didn't move. The drivers had made a decision Ashworth hadn't accounted for. Here's the part Ashworth didn't know Pruitt was already thinking about. This wasn't the first time. 2 weeks earlier, on a different stretch of supply road near a different village, the same thing happened. Boyd saluted. Ashworth didn't return it. Pruitt saw it then too, and said nothing, because raising it had felt like more trouble than it was worth. He told himself it was a one-time thing, an officer distracted, nothing worth making an issue of in the middle of a push east. But Pruitt kept a small notebook, the kind every sergeant keeps for incident times and delays nobody upstairs wants to hear about. When he flipped back to the timestamp from 2 weeks ago, then looked at today's, the pattern sat there on the page, plain as anything. 2 refusals, 2 weeks apart, same lieutenant, same soldier. This wasn't an accident. This was a habit nobody had been willing to name out loud. You need to know what kind of work Boyd was doing to understand why this mattered, beyond pride. Curtis Boyd was 21, from Macon, Georgia, driving for what the men called the Red Ball Express, the supply chain keeping fuel and ammunition flowing to Patton's tanks as they pushed east, faster than anybody had planned for. Boyd's truck wasn't just cargo, it was momentum. Stop enough trucks like his, and you don't just lose an afternoon. You lose the pace of the whole advance. He kept a photograph of his younger brother tucked inside his helmet liner. a kid back home who'd been drafted not long after Curtis shipped out. He didn't talk about it much, but Pruitt had watched him touch the liner before climbing into the cab more than once, like checking something was still there before he trusted the road again. Pruitt made a decision that morning he hadn't made 2 weeks before. He wrote it up. Disciplinary incident. Unresolved. Cause of delay. He sent it up the chain instead of burying it the way he had the first time. The first man who got it was Captain Earl Ruiz, the battalion adjutant. Ruiz didn't want to fight either. Nobody up the chain wanted this particular fight. He read Pruitt's note twice, folded it back along its crease, and decided the fastest path through it was paper. He filed a quiet reprimand against Ashworth, the kind of document that disappears into a folder and changes nothing on the ground. Then told the convoy to get moving. Problem handled. On paper. The trucks rolled forward another 2 miles before they stopped again. It was past 9 o'clock by then. The morning fog burned off, the road ahead clear all the way to the next bend. Word travels fast on a stalled road, and the drivers had already heard what happened to that reprimand. Nothing. No correction. No acknowledgement in front of the men who'd actually watched the refusal happen. A piece of paper in a file folder didn't mean anything to 6 men sitting in cabs with their hands off the wheel, watching the same lieutenant walk the line giving orders like nothing at all had occurred. By the time it reached a colonel further up the line, the conversation wasn't about Boyd anymore at all. It was about fuel. The colonel saw a stalled supply convoy threatening to slow down forward tank movement at exactly the moment Patton's spearheads needed everything they could get. And his solution was simple. Pull Ashworth off that route. Reassign him somewhere quieter. Cool it down. Make the inconvenience disappear before anyone above him had to ask questions about why it had happened twice. Nobody had actually fixed anything. In one morning, 3 different officers had moved the same problem sideways 3 different times, and the road was still empty. By noon, the convoy had lost the better part of a morning that should have carried it nearly to the river crossing. The fuel delay report landed on Patton's desk that afternoon. It read like a routine line item. Convoy delay, several hours. Cause, disciplinary incident, unresolved. Most days, an entry like that gets initialed without a second look. Patton looked at it longer than that. He asked his aide what kind of disciplinary incident stopped 6 trucks loaded with fuel for hours on a clear road. The aide didn't have a clean answer. That gap, more than anything written on the page, is what got Patton moving. He didn't wait for a full briefing. He didn't wait for Ruiz's folder or the colonel's reassignment order to work its way back to him. He called for his jeep. Everyone on that road expected the same thing when they heard Patton was coming. They expected fury. Maybe Ashworth busted down on the spot. Maybe a screaming dressing down the whole convoy would be talking about for weeks after. That's the Patton most of these men carried around in their heads before they'd ever stood near him. The jeep came in fast, dust kicking off the shoulder, and stopped almost level with the lead truck. Patton stepped out before the dust had fully settled behind him. Captain Ruiz had ridden in behind him in a second jeep, and he climbed out slower, already looking like a man bracing for something he couldn't control anymore. He didn't look at Ashworth first. He looked at the convoy, the whole stalled length of it, the engines, the drivers half out of their cabs. Then he found Boyd, still standing near his truck door, helmet off, watching everything happen without saying a word. Who didn't return a salute? He said it flat, not shouted. The kind of question that didn't need volume to land hard. The whole column seemed to go quiet at once, like even the idling engines had decided to listen. Ashworth stepped forward, already talking, already trying to make this sound smaller than it was. He said he hadn't seen the man salute. Said it was an honest mistake, sir. Nothing more than that. Patton turned to Pruitt instead. You saw him see this man. Twice. Ashworth's mouth opened and nothing came out. He hadn't expected the sergeant to have kept count, hadn't imagined that anyone had been tracking him at all. Ruiz stepped in, trying to salvage something. "Sir, I filed a reprimand on this lieutenant this morning. It's documented." Patton didn't even look at him. "Documented where?" "In his file, sir." "His file isn't standing in this road." Patton's eyes went back to Ashworth. "This man's salute isn't in a file either. It's right here, in front of these 6 trucks, and it's been ignored twice." Ruiz didn't try again. Patton didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He looked at Boyd directly for the first time since stepping out of the Jeep, and the whole road seemed to feel the shift in his attention. "Salute me, soldier." Boyd straightened up, brought his hand to his brow, sharp and clean. The kind of salute a man gives when he's been waiting 2 weeks for somebody to take it seriously. Patton returned it immediately, just as sharp. No hesitation, no pause for effect, like it was the easiest thing in the world. Then he turned back to Ashworth. "That's how it's done. Now you do it." This is where most people assume the story explodes. A general humiliating a lieutenant in front of an entire convoy. Maybe a threat of court-martial. Maybe a transfer to the worst posting in France. That's the version that gets told secondhand. The cartoon version. Loud, brutal, theatrical. He didn't do any of that. He didn't bust Ashworth's rank on the spot. He didn't deliver a speech about equality, about duty, about the uniform meaning something bigger than the man wearing it. He just stood there, arms crossed, and waited. Ashworth raised his hand to his brow. The first attempt was sloppy, rushed, an officer trying to get through an order as fast as possible so it would be over and everyone could move on. Patton didn't move. Again. Ashworth lowered his hand and brought it back up. Slower this time. Sharper. He held it until Patton was satisfied, and Patton returned it the exact same way he'd returned Boyd's salute moments earlier. No difference at all in how he gave it back. That detail mattered more than anything Patton could have said out loud. The salute itself didn't change based on who gave it. Only Ashworth's willingness to give it had ever been the problem. Money wouldn't have fixed this. Neither would rank, or threats, or a transfer to some quieter posting where the habit would just follow him to the next road, and the next driver who happened to be the wrong color to matter to him. Ruiz had already tried paperwork, and paperwork hadn't touched the actual instinct sitting underneath it. A folder in a tent somewhere, 3 miles back, doing nothing for the men standing in this exact spot. The colonel had already tried moving Ashworth somewhere else, and that would have only relocated the same failure to a different road, a different soldier, a different convoy, stalling for the same reason nobody upstream wanted to name out loud. None of those solutions had forced Ashworth to physically do the thing he'd been refusing to do, in front of the exact men who'd watched him refuse it the first time. Patton made him do it right there, on the same road, in front of the same drivers who'd kept their engines off until somebody answered for what they'd seen. "Pruitt," Patton said. "Log it." Pruitt opened the same notebook where he'd written down 2 refusals, 2 weeks apart, and wrote the resolution underneath them, closing the gap between what had happened and what should have happened from the very first time. Patton looked down the line of trucks one more time before turning back toward his Jeep. "Move them out." Engines started down the line, one after another, the sound rolling backward through the column like something finally letting go after holding its breath all morning. Boyd climbed back into his cab. Before he pulled the door shut, he touched the side of his helmet, just above where the liner sat, the way Pruitt had seen him do before trusting a road. Then the trucks began rolling, the same stretch that had been empty and stalled for hours now filling with motion again, dust rising behind 6 tailgates instead of standing still over none. According to later accounts, what stuck with the men who saw it wasn't a speech, because Patton hadn't given one. What they remembered was the picture of it, a 4-star general standing in an open road with his arms crossed, waiting, completely unmoved, until a lieutenant's hand reached his brow the way it should have the first time, 2 weeks earlier, on a road nobody else had bothered to write down. No theatrics, no raised voice. Just a standard, reset in real time, by the one man on that stretch of France, with enough weight to make it actually stick. Word of it moved through the supply lines faster than any reprimand folder ever could. Men who never learned Ashworth's name or Boyd's still heard the shape of the story passed along at fuel stops and rest halts. A private salute, ignored twice, and a general who didn't lecture anybody about it. He just made the lieutenant do it again, in front of everyone, until he got it right. Some versions of the story got the road wrong, or the village name wrong, or even the lieutenant's name wrong by the time they reached the next division over. But the detail that never changed, in any telling, was the part where Patton stood with his arms crossed and waited. The road that had been silent and empty that morning was full of moving trucks by evening, fuel reaching the tanks at the front, close enough to schedule that nobody above Patton ever asked about the delay again. The whole incident folded quietly into the kind of story men tell each other later, half laughing, half serious, the way you tell something you didn't quite believe, even while you were standing there watching it happen. Was this really about a salute? Or was it about what happens to discipline the moment courtesy stops being equal, and what it takes for somebody with enough rank to actually notice the gap before it costs more than an afternoon? Would another commander have let it stay buried in Ruiz's folder, or shipped quietly off with Ashworth's reassignment? Or did it take someone exactly like Patton, impatient, blunt, allergic to wasted time on a road that should have been moving, to see that the real delay was never the convoy at all?